it's been a pleasure personally to be involved in pretty much every significant experiment in decentralized governance, including both very successful and unsuccessful ones. And I'm going to break down some of the different things that have made them successful and get beyond the inertia that you have with some types of projects. So there's a lot of reasons for inertia, and there's also things that make decentralized stuff really successful. Historical models, like what's up on the screen, you have the US government, Fed, Illuminati, big bankers, all that kind of good stuff. It sort of works if you like the US dollar, but most people around the world seem to think it's better than a lot of the alternatives. And it was originally one big banker who basically said, hey, let's decentralize this a little bit, and that's how we got the Fed. In the blockchain world, you get ASCII, Bernanke, and a whole bunch of sort of thin layers, which at least in the first iteration didn't really include governance more than a very loose sort of open source governance that you would have similar to like a GitHub repository or something like that. And that has been basically, what a lot of people in the Bitcoin ecosystem have been very comfortable with and said, hey, if it doesn't, if it's not broken, don't fix it. Although, as people have gone along, there's been a lot of people who have argued that it is broken, that we actually need things which can evolve along with the pace of technology and not just freeze it at a certain point. First, perhaps most important of those was Darkcoin, which, interestingly enough, served a particular market, people who really cared about the anonymous nature of transactions. And that project evolved and really built a kind of decentralized governance protocol where you could have 1,000 Dash, set up a master node, and then participate in the community disbursement. And one of the actual results of that and the economic model behind it is that they ended up both approving marketing for rebranding themselves as Dash, which was very successful from, for instance, the time I got involved, which was around the $3 mark until today, which has been a pretty successful model. And if you're on an airplane today, you can see that. Another interesting evolution that illustrates some of the problems in the Bitcoin stuff was Mastercoin. Vitalik, Counterparty, a lot of other people were involved in Mastercoin at the time, but it was very controversial in the Bitcoin space because they said you shouldn't actually put any extra data into a Bitcoin transaction. So it was enabling certain extra possibilities on top of Bitcoin, like voting, but many of the people, including the Blockstream employees now, were very, very hostile to this and said basically it shouldn't exist. And we're going to actually adjust the Bitcoin protocol so that these things can't be built on top of it. So you have two very sharp viewpoints on that. And that forced a lot of people to go into other spaces, including Vitalik, who basically said, this is never going to work on top of the Bitcoin blockchain. People don't like it. I'm going to build my own project, Ethereum. And they did some interesting governance evaluation. They had a board right out the gate of their foundation, and they had some degree of accountability and transparency and governance. In some ways, it looked more like a traditional thing. And then you get the more radical versions of that, like the DAO. And I would argue things that make these really radical things successful is extremely well-articulated vision, transparency in the execution, and incentives. And the DAO illustrated all of those extremely well. Obviously, it was broken, which is a big problem. But they generated a huge amount of enthusiasm. And even to this day, even though that term is somewhat poisoned, you have it re-emerging in things like DICOs and that concept that the community itself can directly own and govern a project only through a blockchain. It doesn't need any other sort of external organizations, or even if it does, they're sort of external to the primary focus of that organization. And that's led me to kind of get involved in the founding of Swarm and Swarm Fund, which is trying to integrate some of those legal models and allow sort of real asset integrations, but some of the strengths of the decentralized governance, which is a sort of 4-year process to get to this point to actually build those legal integrations into existing thing. But one of the interesting things is it can bring a sense of coherence around the evolution. This is sort of Conway's game of life. If anyone's from a computer science background, you've probably built something like that. But we were at this level of extremely nascent cellular autonoma, artificial intelligence being built in blockchain context, and that's going to take these things to the next level, to some coherence. So brief review of all the different projects that have been there if you want to look at these slides in the future. But these are the most successful ones, and they've all really pioneered a new form of governance that illustrates these points. Transparency, vision, and the incentives, all being very important. And if you just have incentives, you just have a coin, you're not really fully leveraging the possibility. And as you bring these things together, you also bring in the possibility of merging other technology like artificial intelligence and other things like that that then can participate, and sometimes on an equal footing with humans or in some kind of compatible way instead of a hostile way.